In today's video, I want to give you my updated draft ranking system here for the 2019 NHL Draft. We're going to take another look at the top 10 prospects. I'll give you my January updated list here. Now that we're through the World Junior Championships, certainly a lot of these prospects have had a chance to kind of showcase themselves, and we'll see what's changed since we last looked at this. We'll discuss the top 10 coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned off the top, today we're going to take a look at our updated ranking system here for the 2019 NHL Draft Prospects. A lot of these prospects have had a chance to kind of showcase more of their skills recently between the World Junior Championships as well as the World Junior A Championships. So I want to take a look here at the updated top 10 list as of January 2019. At number 10, we have defenseman Bowen Byram from the Western Hockey League's Vancouver Giants. Previously, he was listed at number 7. I now have him listed here at number 10. And this is really nothing to do with his play personally. I felt like some of the other prospects just have picked up their play and had a chance to pass him here on the depth chart. Now, personally, right now, in the 2019 NHL Draft, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of defensemen have that potential to go in the top 10 or top 15. It's a really forward-heavy draft. There's a lot of centers, a lot of wingers that are going to outrank a lot of these top defensemen in the 2019 draft. And a lot of these guys, as you'll see here, there's a trend like Byram play in the Western Hockey League. In my opinion, Byram right now is the top defenseman in the draft. He's certainly a very well-rounded defenseman, good skater, pretty good gap control, pretty decent offensive skills. And right now he is listed as my number 10 prospect for the 2019 NHL Draft. Number 9, we have a new entry to my top 10 here, and that's left winger Arthur Kaliyev from the Ontario Hockey League. Kaliyev, playing with the Hamilton Bulldogs of the OHL, is certainly in a position where the Bulldogs are kind of fallen down in the standings and have traded away a lot of their top players here in the last couple of weeks. So his role on the team is certainly changing. He's getting a chance to have a more expanded role. So we'll also get to see how he keeps up with his offensive totals. Obviously, being a more experienced player on the team and playing with some more younger players now that some of the more experienced guys have been traded out will certainly put a test to how good he is offensively. But right now, he's one of the leading scorers in the Ontario Hockey League, putting up 63 points in 44 games. He's an absolutely dynamic left winger. So far this season, because he's had a chance to play with a lot of different players because of all the trades they've made, he's proven that he can play with just about anybody, and he's also proven that he can develop instant chemistry with a lot of his other teammates, which he's done so far this year. He's a terrific passer, got a good shot, really dynamic offensive winger here with a lot of potential. So personally, I moved Kaliyev into my top 10, and we'll see where he goes the rest of the year. It'll be very interesting to watch this player now that team he's playing on has changed quite a bit. Next up at number 8, we've got Kirby Dach, another Western Hockey League top center iceman. Is a right shot center, pretty big guy at 6'3". Previously, I had Dach listed at number 5, and he very well might work his way back up, but his offensive numbers in the last 3 or 4 weeks have certainly dipped down. He's been in a little bit of an offensive slump, as you would say, but he's certainly still a top-notch prospect, and I believe he can certainly turn his game around and work his way back up this list. But there's a handful of these players that are very similar in a lot of ways and are very interchangeable depending on whose list you look at. So right now, I moved Dach down because of his current slump into the number 8 position. But Kirby Dach is certainly a player that I do think has a very high likelihood of not only developing to be an NHL player, but being a very solid NHL player. He's a big, strong right shot center iceman, which is certainly something that's in high demand in the NHL. He's a terrific skater. He's a great passer, got a really strong hockey IQ. And he's also proven that he can be an excellent power play guy as well, often being a quarterback on a power play. So really there's a lot to like about Kirby Dach. I think he will certainly get himself out of his funk here and more than likely move his way back up the draft ranking list here. But for right now, I've got him ranked here at number 8. Next up at number 7, we get another new entry to this list, and that's Alex Turcotte from the U.S. National Development Program. Now, the only reason Alex Turcotte did not make my original top 10 from last month was the fact that he missed a lot of time this year due to injury. Obviously, because of that, I had to move other forwards and other players higher than him up on the list here, just because I had more of a chance to see them, and they were certainly being very impressive seasons. But now that Turcotte's been back for a little while, he's certainly proven that he's able to take some of those spots back. I've seen early in the year, before the season even started, he's been on some lists as high as number 3 or 4 as well. I do think it's quite a possibility here that Turcotte can continue to work his way back up the draft ranking systems once he gets even more timing back and develops even more rhythm here as the season carries on. Alex Turcotte, certainly one of the better skaters in this draft for sure. Certainly his biggest strong suit. He's an excellent puck handler. His acceleration, though, is extremely key. To watch this guy take off, he can catch just about anybody. Because of that, too, I've seen him a lot of times be a very strong back checker. He's a very hard-working type of player, very competitive. Certainly wants to work hard every shift. 200-foot player. Alex Turcotte, like I said, is one of the better skaters in this draft, and he's a very competitive guy who works very hard every shift. He's not an overly huge player many times, even not only going on an offensive zone, but coming back into the defensive zone as well. He can take off and catch just about anybody on the back check. But his ability to be a tremendous offensive player with that incredible speed he had is by far his biggest strength, and he's going to continue to work his way back up on my list now that he's returned from injury and looking pretty solid. But number 6, we've got left winger Matthew Boldy, another American-born player from the U.S. National Development Program. He's certainly a very gifted goal scorer. Now, previously, I had him ranked a little bit lower on my list. He's been a little bit more consistent than some of these other draft prospects, which has put him up here a couple of spots higher. He's been very impressive as well. The Boldy's been able to keep up his play and manage his statistics and still put up a lot of good points, even without Jack Hughes. He's played a lot with Hughes, and of course, with Jack Hughes being away for the World Junior Tournament, there's certainly, he was still very impressive in his absence, which is also very good for his own development. Obviously, playing with good players like Jack Hughes is certainly going to make you even better. But when you can prove when they're not there that you're still fully capable of being a very productive player, that certainly makes your strength look even better. Boldy has one of the better shots in the U.S. National Development Program, and he can also be a very creative playmaking winger as well. So he certainly has a lot of offensive upside, and I really like Boldy's game here. So I can see him kind of hovering around that 5 to 10 range and likely finishing there later before the NHL draft in June. Next up at number 5, we got a center iceman again from the WHL, and that's Peyton Krebs from the Kootenay Ice. Peyton Krebs is a player that's a little bit difficult to kind of develop a stronger scouting report on because Kootenay's a team that's kind of gone through a lot of transition here. They've made a lot of trades. He was recently named captain a few months back as well. There's a lot going on in Kootenay, so he's a really impressive player on a not a very good team, so sometimes it's a little bit harder to judge if he were to play with some different players, what kind of numbers he could put up, or what could he possibly be capable of if he was surrounded by a better supporting cast. But Krebs is a very smart player with strong hockey IQ. He's a tremendous playmaker. He's not overly big, but he certainly plays a very competitive, intense hockey style. Very exciting player to watch. And he's a player I'm certainly very interested to keep an eye on here throughout the rest of the year. Like I said, playing on a bad team certainly does not help things. But it's been clear all along that Krebs is certainly one of the more elite performers in this draft class. Is certainly likely going to be a very solid. It's almost a guarantee that he'd be a top 10 pick, depending on where he finishes the season at here. But it's certainly going to be a very interesting player to watch to see how he finishes this year on a not a very good team. Next up at number 4, we got Russian player Vasili Podkolzin of the MHL, which is the Russian Junior League. Now, Podkolzin's a player who's really stormed up the draft rankings here really since the beginning of the year, but he's a player that kind of flew under the radar heading into the beginning of this current hockey season. But really, he's had a tremendous tournament. He's had a couple of really impressive outings. I mean, he was a leading scorer at the Yelinka Gretzky tournament. Then he played in the WJAC tournament and was really strong for Team Russia. He also had a chance to move up and play for the World Junior Championship Team Russia as well. He was very impressive there as well, with a little bit more of a limited role, but he still put up 3 assists in 7 games, and he did not look out of place, even though he's one of the younger players in the tournament. So Podkolzin's a very, very exciting offensive player here. He plays a very fast and physical game. He's really showing that he can be more of a complete player. I mean, there's been times in the past where I had a little bit of concerns over his hockey IQ and his ability to pass and, not be like a one-trick pony where he's kind of a one-man show. But he's certainly showing in the last few tournaments that I've seen his play in that he's certainly developing that and certainly coming a long way as well, being more of a team player, a little bit more of a complete player, and showing that he is a little bit smarter of a hockey player as well than some might have given him credit for. I'm very high on Podkolzin. I know some people are not sure what to think, and I do firmly believe that Vasili Podkolzin will likely be a top 5 pick in this draft, depending on which teams are picking in what direction. I do see him, being another version of like a Vitaly Kravtsov that the Rangers took high last year, but I think his ceiling might be even higher than Kravtsov, and he's not going to be such a surprise like Kravtsov was by the time we get to the 2019 draft. Next up at number 3, we've got another top center from the WHL, and that's Dylan Cozens. Cozens is a big guy, 6'3", but he's a terrific skater. One of the better skaters in this draft, and for a guy his size, that's incredibly impressive. Cozens has the ability to take over a game because of his skating ability. He's strong on faceoffs. He's a solid two-way player, and he's just a really all-around top center iceman. Dylan Cozens is a player that I had ranked in the exact same position last month, and I do fully suspect that he's likely going to stay in there. I really think my top four likely will not change between now and the end of the season. We'll reveal picks 1 and 2 here momentarily. Probably won't come as a big surprise to you. So I do really think with his recent play in the WHL that he's kind of cemented himself as that solid number 3 choice. Just like I think Podkolzin is pretty solid in that number 4 spot as well. I really think both these guys are going to end up being top 5 picks. And unless something drastic happens here, I really don't see them coming out of their spots here on my ranking system between now and the end of the season. At number 2, we've got Kaapo Kakko of Finland, of course, playing over in Liga right now. Had an opportunity to showcase himself in the World Junior Championships, and he did not disappoint. He had an incredibly impressive tournament, helping Team Finland to the gold medal and scoring the golden goal versus Team USA late in the 3rd period in the gold medal game. It was a really incredible moment for Kakko. Being the 17-year-old in this tournament, it was very, very impressive. And in my opinion, he really cemented himself here as the solid number 2 pick. Now, there are some people out there who think there's a real battle between Hughes and Kakko, and I do think that, there is an argument to be made that long-term Kaapo Kakko very well might be the better player. There certainly is a possibility. Until these guys get into the NHL, nobody can really say with any kind of certainty, but I do think that Kaapo Kakko is probably the most NHL ready right now. If you really compare Kakko and Hughes, they're very different style of player, but I think Kakko can step into the NHL right away, whereas I would have some concerns that Jack Hughes would be NHL ready right now. Now, by the time we get to the draft into next season, obviously that could change, but I think Kakko is certainly the most ready NHL player in this draft that could step in and have an immediate impact with whatever team is fortunate enough to select him. Number 1 is still Jack Hughes, the tremendously gifted skater, top center iceman, and the fact that he plays center and he can play it with such speed and creativity certainly makes him the top pick. No offense to Kaapo Kakko, but obviously position does play a role here in many of the draft ranking systems, and oftentimes, regardless of what your team needs, you draft the best player available, and it's really, really difficult to not rank Jack Hughes number 1, being the center iceman that's so fast and so creative and such an offensive dynamo that I don't see Jack Hughes coming out of that number 1 spot between now and the end of the season. Kaapo Kakko is a terrific hockey player. We're kind of in a situation almost like we were a few years back with Matthews and Laine. They're very different players. Obviously, it's the same situation, one being American, one being from Finland. So it's kind of unique in that sense that it could be a very similar type of situation longer term. Obviously, there's some differences in each of their games, but still the same sort of situation. You get a center and a winger, and quite often that top center is almost always going to be ranked a little bit higher just because of the fact that the center right position is probably the toughest to play in the NHL, and you don't often get that number 1 center come along here that you can draft with that 1st overall pick. For that reason alone, Jack Hughes is number 1 for me and likely will not change. Kaapo Kakko has definitely cemented himself, though, as this solid number 2 player in this draft, and I don't see that changing as well. So I'll likely be doing an update here probably once a month between now and the draft and the end of the season here, as these players kind of complete their seasons and have a chance to showcase their skills and see where things can go. Obviously, a lot can change between now and the end of the year. There's lots of other great prospects to keep your eyes on as well, and as we get closer to the draft, we'll start focusing on not just the top 10, but top 15, top 20. We'll start expanding this list a little bit further and taking a look at some of the other prospects, so you're well aware and well educated on a lot of the top guys that are likely going to go in the 1st round in the 2019 NHL Draft. We're also going to start getting into doing some mock drafts, and we'll dig out the draft simulator that I used in last year's draft, where we can do a draft lottery simulation and see which teams likely are going to pick on what position, and then we can have some fun with picking what player they would likely pick and so on. We did it last year in the 2018 draft. It was a lot of fun, and we'll certainly be doing that again here as we get a little closer to the 2019 draft. So of course, as always, love to hear your comments down below. How would you rank these players, and who would be your top picks in the 2019 draft? Obviously, there's all kinds of great players. It's a little bit different of a setup compared to the 2018 draft. Obviously, there was a lot of defensemen last year. This year's crop's a little bit different with a lot of center icemen and some wingers in there as well, with a lot of the defensemen being probably more of the mid to late 1st round selection. So as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments down below in the comment section. Let me know which of these players you're most excited about, and depending on what team you cheer for, who are you really hoping your team drafts this summer in Vancouver. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.